Assuming we do find dilithium on this planetoid, we're going to need a refining facility on the ship to process it.
Lieutenant Torres has already asked permission to start modifications to the auxiliary impulse reactor.
Since they already established power issues were a concern on Voyager, I like that we see them both sticking to that plotline as well as showing how they would overcome hurdles they wouldn't otherwise face if they were in the Alpha Quadrant, like having to refine the dilithium.
Her arguments are quite convincing. She thinks it can be done safely.
I'm sure it can. Tell her I want regular reports on her progress.
I know I harped about not seeing enough conflict, but since they've committed to Voyager being one big happy family for the most part, I like that we're seeing Janeway coming to trust the abilities of her newfound crew members.
Are you sure you won't join me for breakfast? I was thinking of having eggs Benedict with asparagus, strawberries and cream. I said I was thinking about it.
Speaking of paying attention to detail, I like the recognition that the replicators take power. Though this loosens over the course of 7 seasons, we will always see them trading replicator rations and using a physical galley to conserve power.
Captain, you caught me by surprise.
I should say the same thing.
As a parent, Janeway's line really hits too close to home for me.
A few of the vegetables from the hydroponics bay and whip up a little breakfast.
This is the first running gag where Neelix finds something tasty that repels others.
I know it doesn't look like much now, but in a few days you'll swear there'd been a galley here for years. And careful, that one is a little spicy.
Neelix.
The decision to make Neelix a cook was the best choice they made with Neelix early on. His character was a real oddball overall who did a bit of whatever the plot needed for that week. His job as a chef was the most consistent and planned out trait he had, and I feel like this shows in how the scenes were written. They feel the most natural to his character. It's kind of weird to see B'Elanna at the science station, but I guess it checks out since she's doing sciencey things instead of engineering things.
I bet there are a few Ulitian engineers who'd give all 3 of their spinal columns to know where this planet is.
Oh, I see how it is. Only species with 3 spinal columns can be dilithium engineers? That's racist, Neelix.
Lieutenant, you'd better get your dilithium refinery online. It'll be ready to go in 3 days.
I've watched this episode a lot, and the idea that she can convert the auxiliary impulse reactor into a dilithium refinery in just 3 days is by far the most implausible part of this entire episode.
I think you'll find me extremely helpful, Commander. I remember the first time that I flew past this planet. It was about 3 years ago.
Deck 4.
Yes.
The way Neelix goes on and on about tales of past glory just further cements my belief that his character should have been portrayed as a man entering the grandparent age range.
Split up and begin taking geological scans. Keep your comm channels open at all times. And don't wander too far. Stay within a 50-meter radius of this position.
Did you see how quickly Harry Kim left? Chakotay was still giving out instructions. As an ensign, he should have been waiting for his commander to finish. The walls are alive with organ-stealing Vadians. This is the same tunnel we saw in Time and Again. They just gave everything a red tone to it. Get that boom mic out of here.
Not so much as a sliver of dilithium, and yet according to my readings, I should be surrounded by it.
All right, I've had enough of this. Kim, Neelix, we're heading back to this ship.
I like how the characters aren't forced to be idiots for this plot to work. Neelix ignoring instructions because he thinks he knows better fits his personality. Chakotay sees something is wrong and decides it's time to leave. It's really great to see the characters acting like they should instead of going temporarily stupid to shoehorn a plot in.
I'm getting unusual readings from this rock face. Traces of organic energy. Looks like a bioelectrical signature.
What on earth would organic energy look like on a tricorder? Or bioelectric? Does it behave in a manner different from DC or AC electricity? There is no reason why the Vadian wouldn't have taken the shot immediately.
I know there's somebody.
This face looks so similar to the one Neelix has on the cover art for some Voyager DVDs that I can't help but wonder if they just grabbed a screenshot of this moment because the art designer doesn't like Neelix.
I can't be sure, but I think he's going into shock.
I would sooner guess he's having a seizure, but I guess there's a reason why Chakotay wasn't selected to be the field nurse. Chakotay's right, of course, though.
Get the blood gas infuser.
What?
Equipment storage unit 2, second shelf on the left, now!
When you stop to think about it, the amount of medical equipment that your standard starship had to have on hand would have required massive amount of storage space.
The infuser will keep his oxygen level stable for the next hour or so, but after that, he'll die. His lungs have been removed.
Dun dun dun, I guess? I don't know. I'm not ready to talk about this. Let's keep going. Oh man, I loved it when I was sick as a kid and my parents brought in the small black and white into my room.
By the time we got to him, he was unconscious.
No, Neelix was convulsing when you found him. It was the doctor who knocked him out.
The doctor says whoever did this used some kind of transporter to beam the lungs directly out of his body.
This actually makes kind of sense. I can absolutely see someone developing a technology like this. Other than playing the clarinet, Harry Kim's other talent was street magic. Watch as he makes this tricorder go from open to shut in the span of a single cut.
The blood gas infuser will keep him alive for another 47 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you this week's reference to the number 47.
Can't we fit him with a pair of artificial lungs?
His respiratory system is directly linked to multiple points along his spinal column. It's too complex to replicate.
I really dislike the idea of organs being able to be instantly replicated, and the only reason they couldn't do it for Neelix was because they were too complicated. This dialogue exchange feels unnecessary to me, considering replicated organs wasn't something we saw previously in Trek, or was ever brought up again in Trek. Unless you count that weird Trip is Cloned episode of Enterprise. After I recorded this, I suddenly remembered the Genetronic replicator that created an entirely new spinal column for Worf, but I think I'm gonna win on a technicality for this point, and keep it in here.
Inform Mr. Tuvok I want 3 armed security detachments to accompany us. Issue Type 3 phasers.
Oh snap! Type 3 phasers? You know Janeway means business now.
Mr. Paris, did they teach you how to run a respiratory series in your biochemistry classes at the Academy?
Look at the way the Doctor throws that shade on Paris. He knew that wasn't covered in biochemistry class.
I'm going to have to ask you to leave.
I'm not leaving.
Oh come on, there's no way this argument could possibly—
All right, just keep out of the way.
This actually works?
You're right, Captain. There's a 2-degree differential in this section of the wall.
There are no natural geological phenomena that could be creating this heat source.
Tuvok is fairly confident on the geological conditions of a planetoid they just found, considering he's a security officer.
Let's make a little heat of our own.
Janeway! What will Tom think? Oh, you mean fire your phasers at the wall. Carry on. Also, Janeway said to bring a Type 3 phaser, but all they brought are Type 2s.
There was a highly sophisticated force field in place.
Now, I could quibble about how highly sophisticated the force field could possibly be, since all it took to take it down was a single phaser blast, but it was able to trick a tricorder into thinking it was solid rock. That seems fairly sophisticated to me.
What are you doing?
I'm using the transporter matrix to get exact specifications for Neelix's lungs. If I can reconfigure my emitter array, I might be able to create a pair of holographic lungs for Mr. Neelix.
This plan makes partial sense. They can't replicate organs because it's too complex, and interfaces with his nervous system in too many places. But they are going to use holographic lungs to bypass the nervous system entirely and directly filter out carbon monoxide and pass oxygen to the lungs. Now, you could argue that it makes no sense for, as Tom puts it,
a projection of light held in a magnetic containment field
to be able to function like this, but if a hologram could be programmed to filter things out based on their molecular components, the theory would hold.
There's no real matter involved.
I bet the Doctor replayed this moment a lot over the years as a form of therapy.
Now, you hit me. The magnetic containment field that creates the illusion of my body can be modulated to allow matter to pass through it, or...
Considering that Tom's hand just went straight through the Doctor, I'm not sure how the Doctor is able to touch that panel right now.
Because I'm not going to let you perform any experimental surgery on Neelix until I know exactly what you're doing and what the risks are.
So, true story, in my dad's final days, my mom once was fighting with doctors about treatment options, but they weren't listening to her because they didn't have a copy of the paperwork listing her as having his power of medical attorney. Thankfully, a doctor who worked at another hospital where the paperwork had been submitted recognized her and intervened. Cass isn't even Neelix's wife, so she has no say in this treatment is the point I'm getting at here.
I know it sounds pretty grim, but it's better than losing him completely. This way, he'll still be alive. And maybe we can find a better solution somewhere down the road. What do you think Neelix would want?
I'm not sure, but I do know that I want him to live.
This line could have been a great setup for an extremely complex topic that this episode almost touches on and then backs off quickly from. Should people be allowed to choose when to die with dignity? When does a family member persist too long in trying to save a loved one for selfish reasons, requiring increasingly larger acts of medical intervention instead of letting nature take its course? It's a complex and hard issue that a good Trek writer could have done a lot with.
Power systems here are running on an unusual dilithium matrix.
So there are actually no dilithium deposits on this planet?
It would appear not.
Alright, so there are no dilithium deposits, but nothing is stopping you from taking the dilithium running these systems, right?
According to my tricorder, there was a life form in this room less than 10 minutes ago.
Sometimes I wonder about tricorders. Being able to detect how long ago someone was in a room is finding that too much to believe territory for me. Darn it, Tuvok. Not only did you fail to bring the Type 3 phasers, you had your Type 2 set to the mildly discomfort setting instead of stun.
His cellular toxicity is rising. 82%. 86%.
Maybe I could get someone in the medical field to chime in here, but would not being able to breathe affect cellular toxicity? That seems like something that your kidneys would affect more than your lungs. Though Neelix is an alien, maybe his lungs do that too.
Well, if I'm gonna be in here a while, now's as good a time as any to tell you. Your ceiling is hideous.
I love this line from Neelix. Maybe it's just him putting on a brave face, maybe he's deflecting from the reality of the current situation, but I can absolutely believe Neelix would be concerned with the decor. We certainly see him being concerned about it when both Tuvok and Chakotay are in sickbay.
Could you dim the lights a little?
I'm a doctor, Mr. Neelix, not a decorator.
This was the first of the Doctor's "I'm a doctor, not a insert object or profession here" lines in Voyager.
And some music would be nice. Or better yet, are you programmed to sing?
Funny you should ask that, but no. At this time, I'm pretty sure the answer is no.
I have a little accident. I lose a pair of lungs, and the next thing I know, Paris is swooping in like a reptilian vulture.
Speaking of firsts, we also get the first of far too many instances of Neelix being jealous in his relationship with Cass. You can skip the next 2 minutes of this show.
The amount of information this thing can gather puts a tricorder to shame. You fire this at someone, you learn everything about their anatomy.
Is it weird that I can accept that a tricorder can scan things simply by it pointing in the general direction of whatever you're trying to scan? But I reject the idea of a device that scans you by shooting someone with it.
So it sounds like we're dealing with aliens who've developed a technology specifically designed to locate and extract organs from other beings. Why?
That's a bit of a leap in logic to assume that a device that takes extremely detailed medical scans means you're dealing with a piece of technology specifically designed to locate and extract organs. Maybe the medical scans are the primary function, and the surgical aspects only exist for emergencies. Janeway's right, of course, though.
It's approaching a large asteroid.
On screen.
It's entered the asteroid, Captain.
Amazing! They traveled 75,000 light years in 4.5 episodes. This is the asteroid that the Pegasus was trapped in the Enterprise episode, These Are the Voyages. And the TVNG episode, The Pegasus 2, I suppose.
I can't scan the interior. The surface stratum is made up of some sort of neutronium alloy.
Wouldn't making an asteroid that was impervious to scans because it was composed of an alloy be a major tip-off to the fact that it was not an asteroid? What happened to those fancy force fields that could trick scanners into thinking it was just rock? It's good to see that Tuvok is still Lieutenant Commander.
I'm reducing power to the aft thrusters only.
Pretty sure you mean stern thrusters there, Tom. Aft refers to the rearmost part of a vessel's onboard, while the stern is the rearmost part of a vessel's offboard. In layman's terms, the aft is inside, the stern is outside. How long has Neelix been in here at this point? Hours? Days?
I can't see you over there. Feel like I'm all alone.
You are all alone. I'm a holographic projection.
I have the same problem. There is such a thing as being too honest. Also, I like that they moved him out of the surgical bay into one of the more long-term beds. It makes a lot of sense for a triage area. I love the angle on this shot while having this conversation. It really gives the impression that even his mouth is inside this iron lung device. Add to that the fact that they had his mouth slightly muffled while saying these lines, and it really adds to the sense of claustrophobia. In fact, they make sure that for all the shots in the scene, they keep his mouth covered to add to this feeling. I haven't said this recently enough. Robert Picardo is amazing. I love the silent moment he has and the expression he conveys. This is one of the first moments we see of the Doctor not being arrogant, of recognizing how truly out of his depth he is at this moment.
Sensors detect a large chamber ahead.
While I do really like this Hall of Mirrors idea, since they're in the corridor still, I'm not sure it really works out for the full entirety of Voyager to be visible the way it is.
You seem agitated about something.
Of course I'm agitated. This entire situation is getting out of control.
You mean Neelix?
He does not.
And then they tell me there are no nurses, so I have no one to assist me.
I thought Tom Paris was assigned to you.
Like I said, no one to assist me. I am an emergency medical supplement. A supplement. That's all.
I love that this scene exists. They could have just ignored the fact that the Doctor was an emergency medical hologram, but instead they address it head on. It really paved the way for the Doctor to grow, which gave us a lot of great episodes. For an episode centered on the fact that Neelix lost his lungs, this ended up focusing on the Doctor a lot, and it did it spectacularly.
If you want my opinion, you haven't been acceptable. You've been remarkable.
Spoken with all the convictions of a 14-year-old who knows it all. Oh look, they got Seska in the right color uniform now. I thought this was a really clever way to find the ship given the constraints they wrote in the story, and I will always find just a little time to praise good writing.
I'm Dareth, of the Vidian Sodality.
Eagle-eyed watchers might have noticed that he did not say Vidian. Originally he said Vaforian, but when no one could pronounce Vaforan the same way twice, they changed it to Vidian.
If the consequence of this act is a death sentence, so be it.
I mean, it's great that he's willing to give back the lungs that he stole. I'm really feeling sympathy for this guy who was ready to murder Neelix now. More importantly though, these lungs are now filled with the Phage, right? I mean, there's no point in giving them back to Neelix.
I don't have the freedom to kill you to save another. My culture finds that to be a reprehensible and entirely unacceptable act.
This is sadly false. And don't think I've forgotten that just one episode ago, you were ready to let that kid die to save the planet. Tuvok with the quick draw.
According to my readings, you are not here.
Believe me, I wish I weren't.
I love how sassy the Doctor was at the beginning.
Which of you will donate a lung?
Me.
No.
Besides, you've done so much for me. Let me give you something once.
This serves to make a great loving moment for Neelix and Kes. Oh, sorry, I threw up in my mouth a little bit there. But if the issue is that Neelix's immune system would reject any of their lungs, and not that it was too complex as previously stated, then no one needed to donate a lung at all. They could replicate some lungs and then modify them with the Vidian technology.
I spoke to the captain about you. She's given me permission to begin training you as a medical assistant. You'll be a backup for Mr. Paris, or possibly a replacement.
Kes being the medical assistant was the best thing they did with her character. It got her less tied into whatever Neelix was doing that week and let her exist independently. Okay, I'm not going to beat around the bush here. Phage was one of the lower quality episodes for this season in my opinion. It was basically a retelling of Spock's brain from the original series, just done up seriously instead of comedically.
Brain and brain, what is brain?
As much as I like the growth it did for the Doctor and Kes, overall, the episode just doesn't land for me. I mean, any episode that tried to explore Kes's and Neelix's romance lands pretty flatly for me, but this episode was especially hard. The plot just bounces around for a while until the Vidians magically have a change of heart. Except they don't really. They're not going to stop stealing organs, they just got caught this time and helped out on a whim. The pacing of this episode came crashing to a halt with the transporter room sequence. It spends 5 minutes of the episode with them talking in the transporter room, where we are introduced to the Phage, the Vidians. We're told how we should be sympathetic that they left Neelix for dead because this Vidian used to be a sculptor. It just doesn't work. Then it's all undermined by the fact that organs can just be replicated apparently.
It's too complex to replicate.
Combine that with the Vidian technology and no one should ever have to steal organs ever again. Alright, that's it for this video. Shout out to my supporters on Subscribestar and Patreon, which according to my notes is John DeMarco and the Salty Trekker. If you like this and want to be a week ahead of everyone else, you can join John and the Salty Trekker by searching for Life with Matthew on Patreon or Subscribestar, or just click on the links in the description of the video. Be sure to subscribe for more, and until the next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.